Guys, do you quantify the amount of accumulative training load in your week? The reason I talk about this, guys, and I want to talk about this today in today's episode is because a lot of people simply do not do this. They do not quantify the amount of other stresses that are being placed upon them on top of their current training program. A lot of people are following the training program to the letter, whether it's on an Excel spreadsheet, a Training Peaks account, but they're not having a quality conversation with their coaches on all the other variables that are happening on in their life. If you're self-coaching, you're not having this internal dialogue with yourself. You're not giving yourself this fair go. Or you're not having this conversation with people around you that potentially could be calling you out on it. But I shared this with my crew, the SFE crew at the weekend, where I had a really bad long run. I'm kind of building towards an event end of April, and I've been buzzing. I've been really enjoying my running recently, like more so than I think ever, if I'm honest. And I'm just absorbing the mileage really well. I feel like I found the right kind of frequency for me. So I'm kind of doing 3 of each, 3 S&C, 3 runs. And I'm just been building up steadily, working with Dan, our SFE running coach, like just being held accountable via that way. And he's been periodizing it really well around everything else that's going on, running the business, being a dad, everything. But yeah, I was building really well. But then, wow, like Sunday, I felt like I had my long run and I had 2 hours 45 to do, something around that. I felt like I was carrying both the boys on my shoulders, George and Archie, 1 and 4-year-old boys. I felt like I was carrying both of them in my arms as I was running, and about 4 or 5K in, I thought, oh man, I'm feeling useless. I'm feeling flat, fatigued. I just feel like I got nothing to give. I was irritable. I don't know, everything was there. It was just a complete negative headspace. And the sad thing was we'd gone back home to see my parents for Easter. And I was literally running my old stomping ground, I was running along the South Downs Way, for those of you that know it. And I was literally heading out along, out and back, just wanted to go as far as I could along it, pretty much 10K out, 10K back. And normally I love that, it's a lot of nostalgia, a lot of the if you guys can picture it, there's an old barn along the way there, and there was a mother cow and a little calf in there. And I remember being on that, going along that path on my mountain bike and getting hail, hitting the side of my face, and we were kind of sheltering in that barn. But anyway, it was meant to be this I was really excited about this run. But what I'd done actually on the Friday, the Friday we had got there, a couple of days before, that evening, it was a nice evening, and I'd gone out for a quick, easy just over an hour run up over the Three Forts area of Cissbury, Chanctonbury. And it was a fair bit of elevation, for what it is. And anyway, I thought, crikey, maybe I'd smash my quads a bit more than I thought. Maybe I'd empty my tank a little bit more than I thought. And that was playing my mind. And then I got the Sunday run done. Anyway, point is, I got the Sunday run done, but I felt it didn't tick the box. I ticked the box, but it didn't tick my emotional box, as it were. I didn't feel like it didn't give me the highs that I was looking for. Anyway, I got back, and Polly, my wife, she could tell, and I was just like, oh man, I don't know what went wrong. I felt, I fueled well enough. I ate, drank, slept. Anyway, like any good partner, anyone that hopefully you're accountable to, guys, she called me out on my bullshit. She called me out on me and just reminded me of the week we had just had. And it's amazing. Me, guys, I preach a lot, about the good, the bad, the ugly of coaching and things, but there I am in that athlete mindset and not really calling myself out on being on the obvious. And the week prior to this, guys, from the Monday all the way through up until that point, had been very different. Me and Polly flew out to Ireland for 2 days for a business seminar conference, 2 days back to back. Because we didn't want to leave the boys for very long, we flew out early morning on the Tuesday, 4 a.m., leave the house, got into Ireland, got there, straight into a taxi, straight to the event, and that for 8:30 through to 6 p.m., just seminar, seminar after seminar, and then straight back to the hotel, back out, dinner, back into bed, get up early, same again, full day of conference, then straight taxi, airport, back home by midnight. The boys are obviously waking us up at 5 a.m. the next morning. That was Thursday. The week had sort of caught up with me in terms of work. That Thursday, Friday, then with work back to back. And then obviously straight out the door to my parents, which was about a 2-hour drive across the country. Went on the evening run. Saturday was all family, seeing each other and stuff. And then obviously onto the long run. So a very mixed week, guys. I mean, just, in a nutshell, it was that's 3 nights of poor kind of random sleep, and we're getting up early or sleeping in a hotel, or kind of just not pleasant, efficient sleep. Food was good, but it was erratic. It was random. It was kind of on the go. It was, hotels, restaurants, etc. So it wasn't poor, but it wasn't, wasn't great, and wasn't what I'm used to. Hydration, traveling always messes with that anyway. Then obviously back end in the week with all the work and this kind of stress of making sure everything's ticking over nicely in that last little bit of the week, and then traveling, and then getting paired in. So there was so many variables there, guys, that I didn't quantify. I wasn't quantifying in that, in my head when, in those moments, which is, it just highlights the way it is, right? It just the way we are. We're all guilty of it. We're very hard on ourselves. What we've got to, the point of this, guys, is you have to keep quantifying the accumulative training load. The biggest problem we see week in, week out, and with people within our group, within our SFE community, but also people that we get in contact with us, is that this is not being managed on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. You're not being held accountable to the other aspects of your lifestyle. Integrating your running, your triathlon training, your multi-sport riding training into your life is complex. Our lives are busy. We are working. We are trying to look after our families. We're in relationships. Life is pivoting all the time for us. There is a series of internal, external stresses that are being placed upon us that we've got to be constantly regulating and managing and planning for. And a lot of people don't. They're just trying to layer a templated program on top of a very complex lifestyle, a busy lifestyle. And that's not taking into consideration any injuries, any kind of health considerations, any previous kind of struggles with nutrition in the first place or recovery in the first place. So, there's a complexity there. But again, guys, I just want to give you a little bit of an anecdotal evidence is that I'm guilty of this. But on reflection, great. I can understand it. I could then digest it better. I can draw a line underneath it and move on to this training week and get my house back in order, get back into my routines. And this is what we are obviously as coaches always looking to improve upon with everyone we work with is like, right, what's coming up? What's the week look like ahead? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are we going to be less efficient as we want to be? Where are we going to be getting our nutrition from? Where are we going to be, where do we need to be doubling down on our preparation? What environments are we going to be training in? I mean, we've got a number of people traveling right now, and that literally that moment has helped me as a coach and us as coaches, that strength and endurance, to reinforce these values. And this was in our team meeting this week where we were just talking about, okay, are we doing enough for so and so, within the group who's going away at the moment, making sure that they are going to be, hey, they'll be more comfortable than I was potentially. But it's also just adjusting your expectations, right? Like, God, we're so bad at that. We just keep thinking that our output's going to be just as good all the time, but it's going to ebb and flow. And so we've got to be out managing those expectations. Otherwise, we're just going to be living in misery. Like, we're just going to be like, oh, the worst case, we're going to injure ourselves because we're just overloading our system. We're overtraining. We're pushing ourselves with too little. We know we haven't got enough resources, sleep, nutrition, hydration, whatever. And we're just going to get injured. But also, guys, we're just going to be miserable because we're just going to be in this kind of low state because we just never feel like we're kind of achieving what we feel like we could, and that's kind of what I sampled on Sunday. I felt like I was in the gutter a little bit mentally, but I need a pole to pull me out of it. And then I speak to Dan, he pulled me out of it further, called me out on it again. And, talking to the team this week, again, it's just reinforcement of those of what we would consider the obvious. Like, you've got to quantify the external stresses on our life. There are times when things do peak, work commitments, family commitments, the things that holidays, trips, commuting, there's things that we have to just manage, guys. And if you're not doing this on a week-to-week basis, daily basis, potentially, you're in danger. You're in danger. Like, there's no other way of saying it. And I can't tell you how many people who are confused and anxious out there because they're not having this managed being helped manage through this. They've got these long-term tendinopathies. They've got these bone stress injuries. They've got these poor performances. They're not consistent in their training because they're just following template programming. They're not having this type of interaction with their coaches. It's one-dimensional. Like, you've got to be thinking three-dimensional. You've got to be thinking much deeper than this because our lives are complex. And as I said, it's really helped me this week to understand, okay, come on, you know why. Like, it's there. It's black and white. You know why it's there. Do better this week. And obviously it's easier when you are back in your own routines. But again, I'm actually away Thursday through Sunday. We're actually kind of away again. It's kind of just on the go anyway, or on the move, family birthdays and things, competition on Sunday. So either way, it's already given me the right think ahead. I've got two more runs this week. On my long run on Sunday. Where's that going to be? How's that going to work? What's that going to look like? What am I going to need to do to make sure that's better this week? So you join it. We're using that as evidence and as a kind of that, as a driving force for that. But again, it's just having that accountability that's really helping me in the background with Dan. We've moved around a few of the runs this week because of that, and so as a result, guys, it's just thinking ahead. We've got to be doing this. So guys, big takeaway today. Are you quantifying the accumulative training load of your life as well as your training? Is a major contributor. The type of job you do, the occupation you have, that has an impact on your training loads. Like you can't just be thinking, okay, I've got 5 sessions this week. Actually, you've also got to quantify the amount of commuting, how much time you're spending on your feet. And on top of that, that's why we have to ask, like, I'd like to think if you're working from a training app, that app is asking you what type of lifestyle you have. Is it asking you, what type of job you have, what type of lifestyle you keep? If you're a mother, if you're a mum or a parent looking after multiple kids, like you're moving around all day, you're on your feet all day, probably you're not sitting down, resting a lot of the time. If you've got a manual job, teaching, working in a shop or a restaurant or whatever, you're on your feet all day. You're a doctor, a medical professional, like you're on your feet all day. There's so many, and then you're not even quantifying the stress of it. Like there's so, this is just examples off the top of my head. Veterinarians, same thing, like farm or, whatever they kind of environment you're in. There's so much demand we place on our body. We've got to give ourselves a greater understanding of this. Because this is where overtraining creeps in, guys. This is where poor energy availability creeps in. This is where these bone stress injuries, overtraining symptoms start to creep in, poor performances, poor sleep, poor relationship with food, poor relationship with recovery, because we're becoming overwhelmed and we're just getting through it, but we're redlining it. We're redlining it all the time. We are like working with too little. And these are all the things we've got to be getting on top of. So guys, actions for this week coming up. Guys, we've got to be thinking. We've got to really be thinking about kind of what our weeks look like ahead of us, looking at our training program on top of our lifestyle and looking at where those red zones are potentially, where you're going to be, like the quality of nutrition, you're going to be needing to make sure you're prepared for that, thinking ahead with it, hydration, thinking about your sleep, where, what little strategies you need to be thinking ahead, going to bed early, preparing your food, adjusting your training intensity. Like just following the letter of your program is dangerous sometimes. Like you are just cramming that in, trying to fit it in. Sometimes there is adjustments needed. And that's where you're just reaching out to your coach. Hey, heads up, just need to make a few adjustments. Got this coming up. But the most common thing I say to our guys is don't be a stranger. Keep us up to date. Like keep talking to us because things change daily, hourly for some people. And so, but then it does matter sometimes about your training sessions when they're coming in, especially if they're the AE sessions of the week. The interval sessions, the long sessions. Like we want to be aware of those. Because there can be they can disrupt the momentum of a program. Again, at worst, you can pick up an injury, but it can mess with the motivation, the mindset of things. And we want to kind of, as your coaches, we certainly want to maintain that because that's where we build momentum, we build consistency, and that's where the results come from. So guys, think about this as we move forward. Something for you guys to be reflecting on yourself. Give yourself a break. And on the end, look back at the variables before and after these sessions, if it wasn't as great. Assess it, reassess it, bounce off someone that you can be accountable to, reflect on it, make those adjustments to your program. You could be a much, much healthier person mentally and physically from it all. So guys, as always, anything you kind of radiated well and resonated with from this, let me know. Always happy to talk about this in more depth. I'll speak to you soon.